My name is Esteban Redolfi. I'm the director of Digital Future Society. It's a program led by the Spanish government and the Mobile World Capital Foundation based in Barcelona, but we act all around Spain. And what we do in this project is we try to understand the impact of technology on society on different issues, propose solutions and pilot them in our cities. So right now we're piloting more than 9 projects in Barcelona, Madrid, well, different cities from Spain. And for these, we work with the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, European Commission, the Inter-American Development Bank, World Bank, all these transnational institutions with more than 120 experts. So this is kind of a brief introduction to the project, but I would like to talk a little bit about our vision on why it's important gender equality and technology or digital governance. So I will start by, I really came here with 2 objectives. One is extremely selfish. I wanted to learn more and to make contacts. And I have fully accomplished that in this morning's sessions. I was very happy to attend to the W20 panel. It was amazing. Really the level of the participants and the stories that they shared. It was really, really good. And on the other hand, I have already met people that are willing to integrate to the Digital Future Society. So let me get my notes from today because I've changed completely what I was thinking to share because of what I was hearing. So first of all, it reminded me a little bit of an article that I read many years ago, many years ago. It's an article, and I quote the first phrase, it says, "Feminism will make it possible for the first time for men to be free." I remember reading this phrase and saying, okay, I think I understand it. I'm early 20s. I know what free means. And now at my 40s, I'm starting to really understand the complexity of that idea. It was written by a journalist, well, the founder of a platform supporting women for voting in the United States, in New York, in 1915. So it's quite old. It's an idea that I would say it's old, but it's actual. It's it's very updated. So I was raised in this kind of a structure, family structure that was very modern for the years. I had the pleasure to know my 4 grandfathers and, of course, 2 of them grandmothers that were extremely strongly opinionated women, I would say. They were very participant in the family matters. They were talking about everything, discussing with my grandfathers, and they were fully integrated in the family, which, don't get me wrong, it sounds obvious right now, but these are people that were born in 1920. So that's quite an accomplishment. In fact, my family had this openness, transparency, and I would say, well, now we would say inclusion towards women and towards everything. I was able very early to study, for example, classic dance. I was a classic dancer. You can say from my body movement that I didn't accomplish anything there, but yet I had that chance and I was completely free to do it. And that's something that was not normal when I grew up, sharing with my friends, saying I used to do classic dance, and they were looking at me like, what are you? Where are you from? Where are you coming from? It's an amazing sense of freedom to get this opportunity to do whatever you want if it makes you happy. The only problem with that is I was too heavy, too slow, and mainly awful to really do it. So I was saying, when I grow older, I started to sense that, okay, not all the world was as open, not everyone was as happy to welcome any new idea. And then I realized another concept. I became aware of my privileges, which I thought everyone had. I mean, I'm right now white male in my early 40s, middle class, with a good income, and living in Europe. So I'm kind of the definition of privilege in the world. And then I realized that I can interact with people that are not aware of these privileges. And then you speak with some men when we talk about gender equality, and they're very clear, some of them, and I can see a few of us here, which is good. It could be a little bit more, but we will get there, that we instantly know that this is the just, fair, normal thing to do. Gender equality should be something that's more like a human obligation, that's something that should happen or is desirable. Then there are these other men that, of course, they hear gender equality and they say, oh, yes, and they start explaining women what this means, gender equality. It happened for me for a while. And you start explaining these ideas and these concepts to women, and then you say, okay, don't worry about it, we will solve it, and then you ride to the sunset like you're going to save the day just by yourself. And finally, there's still a big number of men that refuse the entire idea of gender equality because their excuse is quite similar in the case of gender as with immigration is immigrants are coming to steal my job. Women are cutting my freedom of speech. And here the clue is that word, the my. They owned the freedom of speech, they own the job. And so sometimes it's just confronting them and telling them, okay, are you sure this is your job? It was designed for you, it was already yours before you came. And we need to fight this very early concept. So, sorry, I wanted to mainly point out these concepts that I pick up through my life, the openness, awareness, and finally I started to become very curious. So we are investigating on how we can connect gender equality to different things of the social evolution. So we found out in some of the papers published by UN and the World Economic Forum also the connection between gender equality and happiness, which is something that's quite logical when you think about it, but it's not speaking that much. The countries that show more KPIs on gender equality are the ones that are showing that their citizens have the highest level of happiness. And the great majority are European countries, so the rest of the world tend to think this is because they are in Europe. But even among the European countries, the ones that have more gender equality KPIs or higher gender equality KPIs are the ones that are really getting higher scores on citizens' happiness. Regarding economy, it's very clear that companies that really have a well-established gender equality, and I'm not talking just about percentage, but in every level of the corporation, these kind of companies are more productive, more efficient. They have less health issues with their workers. They clearly have less rotation, and of course they have more motivation, and their workers are happier. And finally, we get to the smaller unit of our society, which is family. And when the couple shares the household responsibilities, evidently women and men are, well, because of the studies, they have better health, they are happier, and they tend to have quite a better sex life. This is very interesting. In fact, I discovered this study because it was an article on men's health, and they were not talking about health. They were talking mainly about the sex part. But yet, so we have openness, no, that I had as a childhood, awareness, knowing what is our privileges, and being generous towards the ones that perhaps are not as favored. And finally, it's inclusion in countries, inclusion in companies, inclusion in our families, are the clue. Now, let me link it to the project I was telling you about earlier. Digital Future Society, as I told you, it's a huge global network. We work with more than 40 entities from, 60 different, with presence in 60 different countries, more than 120 experts. What we do is we organize work groups to analyze every challenge, to propose a solution, and then we do a prototype or pilot in a real world to test that solution. So it's not just an intellectual exercise, but also a practical exercise. And here what we have noticed, and we have applied all what we have learned through life. It's not only me who has done these learnings through life. And we built groups that are as inclusive as possible. Of course, there's gender balance, gender equality, but also we need geographical and background equality. And let me give you a case that we have studied recently. A huge insurance company here in Europe, they were hiring in a very short amount of time. They needed to hire 100 people for their marketing and sales departments. So they decided to apply an algorithm to help them pre-select the candidates. Good idea, it seemed it worked. And in fact, in the first part, they received more than 50,000 candidatures. It's a huge amount of people. It's nearly impossible to look through all of them in a human scale. So they used the algorithm, and they get about 3,000 candidates pre-selected by the algorithm. They started looking at the profiles. They were really good. It was very well selected. The quality of each of the professionals was fantastic. But one technician that we are working with her in one of the working groups, she kind of in one moment stepped back and grabbed the big picture, not analyzing each of the candidates. And she found out that 97% of them were men, of the pre-selected candidates. So they said, oh, this doesn't apply with their policy. This company is very serious about gender equality. So they stopped the process and paused it for a while and started analyzing what had happened. They found out the algorithm was scoring less for women candidates between 25 and 38 because they were more exposed to having off-time work. Meaning, and it was not clear because the algorithm was not fully transparent, that they had some kind of disease in that moment. Then they analyzed a little bit more, and it was that they were probably, or there was a probability to get pregnant. So there was this ambiguity that pregnancy was a disease is less time working, then you're less qualified for this job. This is terrible in many, many senses, but then if you think about the real world, you must get that every day. I mean, that's something that happens in a smaller scale, in a human scale. Whenever a woman enters an interview and then a man enters the interview, if they are between this age range, there's a bias that we humans have yet as a society, thinking, oh, this woman is likely to have kids in this period, perhaps I go for the men. That's terrible, but the good thing is that the algorithm allow us to realize that our bias is going into the machines. We are programming this bias in a way that we are not even conscious about it. Later analysis also revealed that the entire IT team were men. The entire legal responsibles of the project were also men, and the main responsibles of the entire process were also men. So none of them thought about it. It's just they weren't really looking to do wrong. They did it without knowing. So Digital Future Society, we try to avoid that by making these widely spread work groups that are as diverse as possible and inclusive, meaning they will participate and be part of it. And we have one very success story. This group, it's very tough to do this because you need to coordinate many agendas of people coming from the United States, from Latin America, Africa, Asia from different points, because Asia is huge, Europe, and then you have to coordinate also what their intentions, what they want to build, trying to build up something that is really agreed by everyone. So extremely difficult. The one working group that was really perfect, we had everything. Of course, the results was the most accurate. The prototype that we are developing right now, it seems it will be the most successful. It's a real solution. We heard all the voices. We are also moving that prototype throughout the world, not only in Spanish cities, because we have an input from different geographies. And mainly, once Digital Future Society stopped using the working group continued by their own. They are still doing projects among themselves. They are still building other solutions, and we are not coordinating them. It started a new kind of interaction that was built on the richness of that inclusiveness, of that variety of people, profiles, backgrounds, genders, and everything. So it's what I wanted to share here, and I heard a lot about very interesting thoughts. It's that we tend to think technology from the user point of view. We tend to think technology, it's biased for me as a user, but the problem is that the very origin of the technology is being biased. So we need to rethink not only the developer ecosystem, not only the design of the project, but the entire technology governance ecosystem. So we cannot leave just a few companies from a very specific geography to design the products and services that we are using by just people like me. White men around their 40s, 50s, perhaps some of them, with a lot of privileges, a lot of bias, and a lot of misinformation about the rest of the world. So mainly this is what I wanted to share. I ask you please to enter digitalfuturesociety.com to know more about what we are doing, the different projects that we are into. And if you are interested in being part, just come close to me or just send an email through the platform if we do not have a chance to talk. And you are more than welcome. So thank you very much.
Esteban, I'm really proud to be your Congress godmother. Thank you.